Welcome to the UK Travel Planning Podcast. Your host is the founder of the UK Travel Planning website, Tracy Collins. In this podcast, Tracy shares destination guides, travel tips, and itinerary ideas, as well as interviews with a variety of guests who share their knowledge and experience of UK travel to help you plan your perfect UK vacation. Join us as we explore the UK from cosmopolitan cities to quaint villages, from historic castles to beautiful islands, and from the picturesque countryside to seaside towns.
Hi everybody and welcome to episode 110 of the UK Travel Planning Podcast. This week I have the lovely Leanne, who was in episode 100, was one of my guests talking about what she loved about the podcast. And I had to invite Leanne back to talk all about her trip to the UK. So this is Leanne's trip report. And I'm also going to say Leanne is a fellow Aussie, so it's lovely to have another Aussie on the show. So Leanne, would you like to introduce yourself and tell us where you come from?
Yep, I'm Leanne McHarg and I'm from Glen Innes in northern New South Wales. And basically we're 7 hours from Sydney and probably 4 hours and a bit from Brisbane. So we spend more of our time probably in Queensland than we do the other way because it's closer.
And warmer.
Plus there's more sunshine. Not that I don't mind the cold. That's why I probably love the UK.
That's probably why I moved to Australia, Leanne.
Yeah, I don't like the heat, so I'm happy. When I lived in Brisbane, it was like, oh my goodness, I just, don't like the heat at all. But I like that cold.
And it does get hot. It does get very hot.
Yes, yeah.
So what do you do? And I mean, I know that you're a mum and you've got some kids and your husband and your family. So let's find out a little bit about them.
So I'm a bookkeeper, self-employed, but I also work 3 days a week as an insurance broker. So I've come into the office to do the podcast because it's a bit quieter. And my husband's self-employed, and basically we've got 3 children, Oscar, Charlotte and Thomas. And at the time we went away, which was April 2023, they were 19, 16 and 13. So our trip had to try and keep their attention.
Yeah, so it was you, yourself, and your 3 kids that went on this trip.
Yeah, we thought Oscar's heading off to uni. This will be our last chance to go on a family holiday where we're all going and, make the most of it. And as we're self-employed, we don't go away that often. So when we do, we make a good go of it, and it's a big trip.
And was it the first time that the kids have been over to Europe?
Yes.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
And my husband, he hadn't been outside Australia either. So I did Europe when I was in my early 20s. So one of those top deck travel trips. So that's nearly 40 years ago now. So that was sort of the basis of how I started with knowing, well, where are we going to go? So
that was a big trip. So now we're also going to kind of cross over, and you mentioned a little bit, into my Global Travel Planner podcast, which anybody, if you're listening, we also have, as well as the UK Travel Planner podcast, which is very well established. We've got 100 and odd episodes now. We also have a Global Travel Planner podcast, which I started last October, because I have lived all over the world. I think 7 countries. I lose track, actually. and I do travel a lot. So we were traveling 5 different countries from October, or maybe 7 countries. I haven't lost track of how many countries I went to for 5 or 6 months, from kind of September last year until March when I arrived back in Australia, with some time in the UK. So I know you spent some time in some European countries. In fact, one country that I actually also lived in. So would you like to tell us about your itinerary and how long you were in the UK for, and kind of the overall itinerary, because it's a really interesting one.
Yeah. So we left Australia on the 1st of April, so April Fool's Day. So I did sort of feel like, is this a mistake leaving on that day? But that's the day we went, and we arrived back in Australia on I think it was about the 23rd of April. So we've gone a bit over 3 weeks, and we flew with Emirates and went via Dubai. And from Dubai, we caught a connecting flight to Zurich in Switzerland. So my brother-in-law actually lives in Switzerland. He in Zurich, and he teaches there. So we thought we'll take the advantage, and so that was great.
Why not? Absolutely, why not? And my parents lived outside of Zurich for quite a number of years. So I've travelled over there quite a few times. I don't know how many times I've been to Switzerland. So that was really cool when you mentioned about that.
Yeah, no, it was beautiful. actually we all enjoyed that time. So, and we just stayed with Robert and just did the trams and the trains, and he navigated, which was quite good.
Yeah,
we didn't.
helpful.
Yes,
didn't have to drive.
Didn't have to deal with a language barrier. Not that he speaks much Swiss or Swiss German. He gets his way around because he teaches at an English-speaking school. So, yeah.
And then after Switzerland, where did you
after Switzerland, we caught the train to Paris, and we had 4 days in Paris. And then we caught the train, the Eurostar, to London. We had nearly 6 days in London. And then we caught the train to Edinburgh, had nearly 5 days in Edinburgh, and then we flew to Dublin and had 5 days in Dublin, then flew home via Dubai, again back to Brisbane.
Yeah, so you did a lot actually in 3 and a bit weeks.
We did.
So
we did.
When you're trying to decide, and I know flying from Australia, it's such a long way that we have to go. So it's expensive. It's a long way. Not everybody can go. I'm very lucky that when I can go over, I try to go for like 3 months or longer. So, but I know I'm extremely lucky to be able to do that. But when you go in for 3 weeks, and obviously you wanted to go and see other places outside of the UK, how did you actually come about deciding on your itinerary and where you wanted to visit?
Well, I think originally I thought we would fly into Dublin, and then going on the dates and when school holidays were was probably what started, right, we need to go Switzerland first because Robert would be on school holidays. So that meant we could spend more time with him and he had the time to take us around. And it was also leading up to Easter. So that was sort of all in there as well, which, led us to, right, well, where are we going to be when it is Easter? Is that going to affect what we can see and what we can do? How busy is it going to be? I think that's probably ultimately how we came to where we flew first and who we flew with also, because getting that connecting flight to Zurich and still be with the same airline and all that sort of stuff was a bit, that added to it, I think.
It's working all those logistics out, isn't it? It's when you're trying to think, so I want to go here. Yeah. And especially if you've got something like, Easter, where there's going to be, everybody's going to be off in Europe. Yeah. So you've got all of everybody traveling in Europe itself. And obviously starting April, things start to get busier. So how did you create your itinerary? So I know that you are a big fan of the podcast, so I know you use that.
So I probably started with Google searches. I just sort of did a few things and then, you see all those different itinerary ideas and travel companies and things like that come up. And then I started saving. I had a folder on Instagram and I was saving, like I'd been looking up lots of different things and you'd see those pictures and things like that. So I'd say, save that. We can go and look at that. So I just kept adding to that folder. And I thought, I'll have a look in Pinterest. So I started doing the same thing in Pinterest. And then once I'd started doing that stuff in Pinterest, I think a few pages came up and I thought, I'll go and have a look at those. And they started talking about podcasts, and I hadn't really considered podcasts as an option at that stage. So I was searching up for podcasts on Paris, thinking, well, that's probably going to be the hardest because we don't speak the language. And I was really nervous about it, even though I'd been there before, but I'm responsible for 4 other people who would all be looking at me like, Mum, what do we do, Mum? So I thought I need to be prepared.
The pressure was on, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. And the anxiety on the inside was pretty extreme. But I couldn't let them know that. Oh, no, it's fine. So then from there, I thought, well, are there any podcasts on the UK? And that's how I came across your podcast and I went, oh, this is awesome. So I just listened to podcast after podcast, and I'd look down your list and see, that we're going to go there. I'll have a listen to that one. So, and then from there, that's how I discovered the Facebook group. And that was a wealth of information. And from there, then I went onto your website and looked at your itinerary ideas. And from that, I basically just then went, right, well, we could do this if we're traveling like this. And it was just sort of process of elimination. What'll work for us? What can help us? That place looks really interesting. And it just all sort of gelled together. And I set out my spreadsheet and the dates I'd be in each place, and then just basically the times, and then added to that each day.
And I guess as well, you had the additional complication of, you see, you had your 3 kids with you, and actually, I mean, your eldest is an adult, so actually incorporating what they were interested in as well.
Yeah.
So did you have conversations with them? I think you probably played the podcast, and I don't know if I was talking to somebody the other day, and they were like, the kids were like, we've heard Tracy talk about this one before.
Yeah, that was me. Not this again, Mum.
Which is really funny. I'm like, I apologise to all the children out there who are sitting in the car at the moment with your parents playing a podcast, listening to me. Sorry about that.
They were like, oh, Mum, you've already listened to this. Not this episode.
It's her voice again, Mum.
Yep, that's definitely what it was like. So, well, actually, when we go away on trips, I usually go round to each of them and say, you need to have a look. What's some place that you would like to go or like to see? And that's how we did Tasmania. Pick a spot, and then I incorporated that into our itinerary, if it can be done. So I did that with them. Oscar's not overly fussed on places and things. Once he gets there, he's right, but he's not that kid that's keen on getting out of his comfort zone. He's happy to stay home, to be honest. So getting him excited about where we went. So I was really surprised when we were in London and we ended up going to Madame Tussauds. He was over the moon. He loved that the most.
Oh, that's lovely. So,
yeah,
well,
loved it.
Horses for courses, that's what I say.
I know.
I listen to other people say when you visit London, you shouldn't do this place or that place or the other place because it's too touristy and I kind of go, you know what? You go where you want to go.
Yeah.
You find
definitely.
Yeah.
Everybody's
different. Everybody's different.
Definitely. Yeah. So he really loved that. And even when we were on the Eurostar, we got stopped because there was the bomb squad up ahead at another train station. That was one of his highlights. He couldn't wait to tell his mates, bomb squad were up ahead. Like that was weird. Thomas really he's our 13-year-old, so he's a big basketball fan. So we went to the NBA store in London. That was a highlight. But I actually said to him the other day, what would be your highlight of where we visited in our whole trip? Imperial War Museum. He loved it.
Yeah.
And he just went off by himself. Half the time we're all like, we'd meet up and go, well, where's Thomas? I've got no idea. He was on one of the levels.
Isn't that the amazing thing about London, that there is just so much to do and see, that there's something for everybody. Whatever your interest is, you're going to find a museum or an attraction or some historical site or something that is going to appeal to you, really.
Yeah.
And that is the beauty of it. And your daughter?
So her highlight, we went to Lord's, the cricket ground.
Yeah.
And she loves her cricket, and we did a tour at Lord's, and that was, loved it. And so I asked her again the other day, tell me again, what was your highlight of our whole trip? Lord's.
Then my husband would say exactly the same, and my brother, I reckon.
My husband,
massive
he loved
cricket
it.
fans.
Yeah.
That's really cool. And again, the ability to go and visit places that you've heard about, or you've watched cricket at, or you've watched a football match at, or you've watched tennis at, if you can get to Wimbledon. Isn't it amazing? It's kind of like you watch these things on TV, and I'm the same when I go to other destinations, and I think, I've always wanted to go here, and I can't believe that I'm actually seeing this or experiencing it.
I really enjoyed Lord's myself. The history and the guide was really brilliant as well. And we were all standing in a circle at the start and had to introduce ourselves. And so we were first up, and Oscar was at the start of the line, and he said, where are you from? And said, Glen Innes, New South Wales. And you could see this other family start chatting amongst themselves. And I thought, it's Glen Innes. Does that create such a big issue? And then at the end of it, they came up to us and said, do you know such and such? I was his best man. And Oscar actually went to school with their eldest son, and then Thomas was in the year with another one.
Oh, that's
my
incredible.
Charlotte was in the, and we're just like, oh my God, such a small world.
Oh, it is, isn't it? That's incredible. That's absolutely incredible. Oh, I love that. That's so cool.
Yeah, so that was really funny.
So that's really cool. So you got your itinerary, you knew what you were doing, you got everybody on board. How did you decide you were going to get around? Because that's a big one.
I think it was cost. Flights it was just more expensive for the five of us to fly to each location. And we thought, oh, well, the train, at least we can see a bit of the countryside. And when I started looking at prices for tickets, like, I was surprised because we booked early enough. If you book early enough, you'll get a decent price. And I think it was, and I wrote that down, so it only cost us to go from Zurich to Paris was $466 Australian, which I think is about £240.
And that's for five of you?
Five of us,
Fantastic.
yeah. And even to go from London to Paris was $553 for five of us. And the same with London to Edinburgh was $75 each.
That's brilliant. Just brilliant.
We couldn't get a flight for that.
You can't. And also, you fly, you don't see anything. You sit on a train.
No.
You sit on a train.
And you've got to be there so much ahead of time, and you're hanging around. Yeah, no. And the trains were great. My husband especially loved the trains. And when I was picking seat placement, I never really sort of thought about it and just put the kids where they were. And he didn't have a window seat, so each time he would go up to them, and he'd say, "Get out." They'd go, "No," and he'd go, "You're only on your phone. You're not paying any attention. I want to look out the window. Get out."
Don't blame him. 100%. And
they go,
so I have to say that we travelled a lot around Europe by train. I think we did 2 summers where we just decided we'd hop on trains and go everywhere. And even because I was a teacher, during the half-term holidays in February, we would just hop on trains and we'd go around Europe. I mean, sometimes we'd fly and then make our way back by train. Yeah. But we did 2 summers where we took my daughter around. I think she must have been 11, and then the following summer she was 12. And we spent 6 weeks travelling around Europe on train. And actually the next year she went, "I'm not doing that again, Mum." I think she loved it, but she'd had enough by the 3rd time. We were like, okay. But I just love it. I mean, it makes you travel lighter because you got to consider that because you're going to be getting on and off trains. Yeah. But what a great way as well to meet people. And also you can get up and walk around without worrying. You don't have to, you can, I don't know. It's just the way to travel. I
think our train trip from London to Edinburgh was interesting because there was a stag do of men on there, and oh my goodness, they were so drunk, like they hadn't even got there yet, and they were getting off at York, thankfully, so they didn't go all the way to Edinburgh.
Good job. They would probably not be able to get off the train.
They were so loud. It was definitely entertaining. You could see everyone rolling their eyes, trying not to laugh and act like, and a few of them went up to first class, so because we just did normal seats, and it got a bit quiet then, so it was like, oh, that's all right. But then they'd come back, and then they're like, and they're cheering, and it was quite entertaining.
Okay. And the travel in Europe itself, so I've actually gone from where we lived in Burton-on-Trent to Zurich in a day by train. Yep. So I've done that whole trip by train, and I just find it so efficient and fast and just
amazing,
comfortable.
Public transport in Zurich was unbelievable. It was just amazing. We also did a day trip to Constance in Germany because my daughter said, I want to go to another country so I can tick that off as well. So Robert's like, oh, well, I go here sometimes when they do the annual fireworks. He used to take his dog to Constance so because it's not far.
Yeah.
So actually that was brilliant. We all loved it, and it was just by train, and it was so smooth, and bang, bang, you're there, and we just spent the day there wandering around and looking at different things, and then got the train back.
Oh, it's perfect, absolutely perfect. Yeah. So did you, when it came to the train tickets in the UK, you bought those in advance? Hi, it's Tracy here. Just popping in to say, if you're enjoying the UK Travel Planning Podcast, I have some exciting news. Why not join us on the Global Travel Planning Podcast, where we bring you travel inspiration, itinerary ideas, real-life adventures, and practical tips to make your travel dreams a reality. We've already explored Japan, Vietnam, Queensland, and Switzerland, with more thrilling destinations coming up. So tune in on your favourite podcast app and embark on a global adventure with us. Yes. So I used Rail Europe app for Zurich to Paris. Yeah. Then I
I think I used that for the Eurostar as well, and then the Trainline app.
Yeah.
But I'd been looking on the Rail Europe app, and they just weren't being released, and so I thought, I'm going to miss out, or something's wrong, so I started looking on Trainline then and went, I can get them now. I'll get them. So yeah, and that's I think how I got them so cheap.
Perfect. So,
and I used ScotRail once we were in Edinburgh, because we went to St Andrews as well, so I used ScotRail for those. So yeah,
you did,
and that was
too.
easy. Yeah.
I think that must have been, I'm trying to think if I did that. I think that was last year that I did that. So it's after I was actually in the UK in April last year. And I think I did St Andrews in June. We did a little video of it, but I got very sick. I don't know. I don't know if I got a stomach bug. So on the way back from St Andrews to Edinburgh, I'm trying to do this video for YouTube, which is on YouTube if you want to know how to get from Edinburgh to St Andrews. But I think I went progressively greener as the trip was progressing. But that's an easy day trip as well from Edinburgh, isn't it?
And it was your podcast and Facebook page that helped with that, because I was really concerned about, I know it's only this far, but once we get to Le Cars, is it?
Le Cars, yeah.
Le Cars. I was like, well, how do we get into St Andrews? So then I actually asked the question in your Facebook group, and everyone's like, oh no, there's buses there all the time. And so I was like, okay, this will be right. So yeah, there was a lot of people got off when we got off and got on the bus, and we're coming into St Andrews and we're like, well, where do we get off? And my husband said, this next stop we'll get off. And so we got off, walked around the corner, and there's the bridge, Swilcan Bridge at St Andrews. So he was like, that's his only thing for the whole trip. We have to have a photo on the Swilcan Bridge.
Yes, absolutely. You do. We also have that photo, and you can, for the show notes, it would be really cool to have that picture. We can add that one in as well. That would be really good. Yeah. So obviously that was probably one of the highlights for your husband. So what about you? What were your favourite experiences and places that you visited?
Well, as I've already said, Oscar was Madame Tussauds. Matthews was St Andrews Golf Course, but I loved Palace of Holyrood. Loved it because I'm a bit of a royalist, so I loved that. Edinburgh Castle we all really enjoyed. Harry Potter World, we did that, and that was actually just visiting Harry Potter World was great, but the whole excursion to get there was just as exciting. So we just caught the bus to Euston Station, then the train to Watford, and got on. And we did come out, and the free bus wasn't there. So I did start to panic, and internally like, oh my God, I hope we haven't missed it. How do I find out where this bus is? And then they came around the corner. I went, oh, thank God.
Yeah, it comes every few minutes. You're fine. Just turn left as you come out the train station, and you'll see everybody waiting for that.
So that was fun as well, getting there, but we all enjoyed that. I think Edinburgh was definitely, we just loved Edinburgh. Probably would have liked longer there. That's why we're heading back.
I have to say about Edinburgh, and I was actually we've got a new partner actually coming on board who does private tours from Edinburgh, and I was talking to him last night, and I was just saying that since I was a child, because I'm from Northumberland, which is right on the border, I've been travelling to Edinburgh my entire life, and it doesn't matter how many times I go to Edinburgh, I never get sick of it. Never.
No, I don't know what it is. It's the vibe.
I think so. I genuinely think so. It's just it's a fabulous city to visit, and I mean, I do say though to everybody that Edinburgh is just one place in Scotland. There's loads of other places to go to Scotland. So it's a great, have your first foot into Scotland, go and see Edinburgh, but then go back, because honestly, again, the whole of Scotland is somewhere I just can't get enough of. And we're planning 4 to 5 weeks in Scotland a year in September, and I'm already excited about that.
Yeah, no, I'm in the process of planning ours for 2026, so it's just my husband and I going this time. But yeah, we want to do that North Coast 500. But we did a day tour from Edinburgh on our last day, and did Glencoe and Loch Ness, which was great. It was a long day. It was 7:45 in the morning. I think we had to catch the bus, and we didn't get home until nearly 9:30 that night. It was
I'm so glad that you did that. I really am, because I think It's a bit like going to, if you just go to London, you don't get a feel for the whole of the UK. You've got to kind of see a little bit extra, and like, you know, it's the same. You go to Edinburgh, it's not Scotland. Like London's not England, so you get those tastes, and it's like getting out and being able to see a little bit more it's so exciting. I think it's a great first introduction, but then after that, and I always think when people go and they go like, oh, I've been and I can't wait to see more, and I'm like, I just know how much more there is that they're gonna love and enjoy. You know, I can't wait to talk to you about your next trip. Yeah, no, it'll be, and I think the kids enjoyed like going to St Andrews, and we spent the day there, and we all said, well, we could have spent more time there, definitely. So that's a place we want to go back to. We loved Glencoe. Just the mountains, the scenery was just, it was freezing cold. At one stage, Thomas didn't actually want to get off the bus, and I said, we are here, you're getting off the bus. This is part of the experience. So, off he gets. And put your scarf on. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. When we went to look at Ben Nevis, so he was like, no, I don't want to get off. Yeah, get off. I love that. So you just kind of briefly mentioned there about the tour that you did in Scotland. So did you do any other tours that you'd recommend? We just booked that through Get Your Guide. So I used your affiliate link, so I hope that actually worked. I love to hear that. Thank you so much, Leanne. Anybody listening, please do use our affiliate links if you're booking anything on Get Your Guide and Firehitter, because it helps us to do the podcast and do the website and run everything. So thank you, Leanne. And they were really great to deal with. Like I had a couple of questions and just put it in the chat, and they came straight back and confirmed different things that I want to know. So they were actually, it was really good. And I didn't think it was overly badly priced. I think it was like $275 for the 5 of us, and we just had to have cash for the boat cruise on Loch Ness to Urquhart Castle. So perfect. I just made sure we had the cash for that, and but it was brilliant. We really enjoyed that. We actually did. I used your link again, so I hope it worked. But we did Get Your Guide in. We did Wicklow Mountains and Kilkenny. Yes. In the Republic of Ireland. So the links work anywhere. It doesn't matter. Even if you go through a link to a specific tour or whatever, but if you book other things for other destinations, it will still work. Okay, so that's really good. Yes. So we did that one as well, which was great. The kids weren't overly impressed with the tour guide. He talked a lot. We all had headaches by the time we got off. Right. The bus, but what we saw, headphones next time. Yeah. What we saw and did was great, and Kilkenny was beautiful. We definitely want to go back there and explore a bit more. It was really lovely. Lovely. Well, I'll be going to Ireland next year because there's a travel blogger conference actually in September 20, which fits in perfectly with our plans because we're actually going to do the circular route London through Wales, Republic of Ireland, up to Northern Ireland, and then across into Scotland, then have a month in Scotland and then back down. So that's our plan next year. That would be, that's more or less what we want to do when we go again. Oh, well, then you can follow along with us on the podcast and YouTube and everywhere else. Perfect. So I've just got to fit a few golf courses in for the golfer. Oh, yes. Yeah. So then I know you did some hop on, hop off bus tours as well. Did you find those worth it? Was good? Oh, the one in Dublin, the Do Dublin, the green bus, was brilliant. And the kids didn't want to get off. And it's the drivers that make it. They were brilliant. They sing, they tell jokes, they get everyone on the bus involved. He might be on the lower level, but he says, I can see what you're doing up there. You're not singing. Like, we just didn't want to get off. But we had to because we had tickets to Kilmainham Jail. So we got off at stop 18, went and did that, and then we had some lunch, and then we walked to the Guinness Storehouse and did that tour, and then caught the Do Dublin bus again outside of that and finished off what we hadn't seen. So it was a different driver, but he was just as good. Fantastic. They were brilliant. But we did the hop on, hop off in London, which was good. It was freezing cold, and that was just the little headphones. So it wasn't quite as good as the one in Dublin, but it gave the information, and, we enjoyed that. Just to get our bearings more than anything. Yeah, I think that's what it's always really useful for. I think if you've never been to London or any city really, just jumping on a hop on, hop off bus for the first few hours, just to orientate yourself. I just think it's really helpful. And, you'll actually start to see where all those places you've got in your head are in relation to each other. And then actually London, you sometimes realise, oh, that's a lot closer to that particular point than I realised.
Yeah, definitely. And we used only the buses in London altogether. We never went on the tube once because we actually thought, well, we can see more if we're on the bus. And where we stayed, the bus dropped off right out the front of our accommodation every afternoon. So by then we're all tired.
Yeah,
great.
That's what you want.
10 steps and we're in the door.
That's perfect. So that kind of leads in really nicely to accommodation, actually. So where did you stay at, and what were your standout accommodation choices?
So we did Airbnbs and stays. In Zurich, we did with my brother-in-law. We did an Airbnb in Paris, Airbnb in London, stays in Edinburgh and Dublin.
And stays for any of our American listeners is as a VRBO or Verbo, I don't know how you pronounce it, but it's the same thing. It's just the Australian version.
Yeah. So, and they were brilliant. And I think it was more so we could do some washing. And I thought that we would cook more, but I was so exhausted at the end of every day because we were gone sort of anywhere from 8 o'clock in the morning, and we were usually back to our accommodation by about 4:30 at the latest most days. And by then the kids had the downtime, they'd had enough, and we were all tired. And so I didn't actually cook as much because we had a lot more eating out and takeaway probably than I thought we would.
And the stays and Airbnbs that you stayed in were good?
Yes, all brilliant. The one in Paris was cooking facilities were a little bit. It didn't actually have an oven. It just had a stove top. So then I thought, oh well, is it a microwave convection oven type? No, it was just a microwave. So it was a bit harder. The place in London was brilliant. It was hidden away. You wouldn't actually have known it was there. But it was like 3 doors away from a pub, and that became our local.
That's
loved it. And at the end of every day, we'd walk in there, and it was an Australian managing it. And so they'd all go, hey, how was your day? What did you do today? What did you see? It was like going into the Cheese bar.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah, so we all loved that. And the meals were brilliant. So good.
Well, that's what I'm going to ask you about now. So you're naturally kind of leading us into the next question that I'm going to ask you, which is basically about foods. What were your favourite foods? Any particular restaurants that you really enjoyed that you'd recommend?
Well, the Tankard in Kennington was our favourite by far. We loved that. We actually did a place in Edinburgh called the Filling Station, which I think is like an American type restaurant, but we actually really enjoyed that. And we did that as our main meal at lunchtime, and then sort of had something light for dinner. The River Court Hotel in Kilkenny was gorgeous on the river. It was beautiful. I don't think, like the Merchant's Arch in Dublin, which is directly opposite the River Liffey, it was beautiful. We did that for my daughter turned 17 while we were in Dublin, so that was her birthday breakfast. The Patriots Inn in Dublin near Kilmainham Jail was yum. It was really nice just for a stop off.
Oh, that's good. How did you find the prices, Leanne?
I've said to people that when we kept converting it to Australian dollars, it was like, oh my goodness, this is costing us a fortune. So we had to stop doing that.
Yes.
So in London we were like, okay, we're getting a chicken schnitzel and it's £25. That's like $25 in Australian. Like that's normal for their menu. So that's how we started looking at it rather than converting it to this is costing us $50+ just for that meal.
Yeah, and having a heart attack because it's because Australian dollar's not great. So it's not brilliant when you're traveling. So yeah, I think it can become pricey.
We went to like a food court in Zurich and had that, and when we converted that, we went, we could have stopped.
Switzerland's even worse.
I know.
Oh, Switzerland is scary. I used to go to my parents. I remember going with my mum. This is years ago, and we went to the supermarket and she bought a chicken. She bought the smallest chicken on the planet. Honestly, whether it could feed 3 of us was a miracle. But at the time, it was about £15. I nearly fell over, and we're talking probably Probably 10, 15, probably 15 years ago. So goodness knows what it'd be now. So I kind of go, yeah, Switzerland's very, very expensive. So, but I noticed like the UK has become more expensive. So you've got to kind of look at, it's funny because my daughter and her partner were over a year and a half ago, and we're just talking about it yesterday about how they love the meal deals. She really misses the meal deals living in Australia because they're just such a good kind of option.
Definitely.
Yeah. Go and get your sandwich and your drink and your packet of crisps or your piece of fruit if you're, healthy wise. And that's perfect. But yeah, I mean, food adds up, doesn't it? It's expensive.
It does. And I tried to cook breakfast every morning if we're in that mood. So then we wouldn't really, it'd be late before we'd have something to eat. So then we'd try and have that sort of main meal and then come home and have something light. So felt like we're only sort of paying for one main meal each day, which helped. But I think food was our most expensive cost while we were away.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. I can imagine.
And a lot of the time, I did say to Matthew, we probably wouldn't have had anything to had dinner because we were fine, but it's the kids.
Yeah, that's it. You've got 3 grown kids to cater for, so that's where I know, because I've got my friend Karen, who she's got 3 as well, and she says whenever they go anywhere, 5 of them, it's like a gulp. It's so expensive, especially now. Then the teenage boys, I think they're like bottomless pits. They're just eating.
And the first question they ask at the start of the day is, "What's for dinner, Mum?"
Yeah. Oh.
So it's that was our biggest cost, but in the end, we just went, look, it is what it is.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of those things, isn't it? You've got a trip of a lifetime, you're taking the kids somewhere so fantastic and special. You just have to kind of, I guess, suck it up for those 3 weeks and go, right, okay, baked beans on toast for the rest of the year, kids, but...
Yes. And we we really got into the saving, and we're not doing that. Remember, we're going on this trip. So, it was worth it in the end, the sacrifice, I think.
Oh, that's great.
Definitely.
So you'll know, because you listen to the podcast all the time, what I end every podcast episode with, which is kind of asking what your number 1 tip would be. But I've noticed that because you've written quite a few tips down, because I did give you the questions beforehand, and you've got quite a lot. So I'm not going to ask you to distill them into one, because I think share them all, which is fine. Yep. But just imagine that I'm asking you what your number 1 tip would be.
Well, the apps. I think you've really got to look and have all the apps on your phone before you go. They were our godsend. City Mapper app in London was brilliant, and that's all I used majority of the time. I'd type in where we were, where we wanted to go. All right, well, we can catch a train or the tube or the bus here, or we can walk. So, and that's how we'd plan our day. I think you've got to be flexible. So we had planned in my itinerary that we would go to, after the Lord's tour, we were going to catch the train out to Windsor and see Windsor Castle. The kids were a bit over it, castles and all that sort of stuff. So I went, all right, well, what about we go to Madame Tussauds? So that's how we ended up at Madame Tussauds, and that just made Oscar's trip. Then I said, well, because I missed out in Windsor, we're going to Notting Hill. And then after Notting Hill, we got in the bus and went to Kensington Palace. So I got those in.
Perfect.
I think my biggest thing was prepare each night for the next day. I looked over what I had planned on our itinerary and, right, what tickets do we need? What do we need to be aware of? What time do we need to get out of the place? How are we getting there? Do we need to book a taxi, an Uber? Are we getting on the bus? So I just did that each evening just to make sure I was prepared for the day, so there were no hold-ups.
I think that's actually really important. However tired you are, I think it's useful to think, right, what am I doing tomorrow? What time do I need to leave by? What time do I need to get to a specific place by? And because obviously when you're planning a long trip, you're not going to retain all of that information in your head. So it's having that plan and that night before going, this is what we're going to do and how we're going to get there. And
I had a folder printed out with everything, so I could just go and grab that out. I also had it on my phone, but it was nice to sit and open it up and look at it.
But you're like me, Leanne, you're from the generation that we like paper things.
Yeah, definitely.
I like to have my paper copy and go through as well. I just feel a little bit happier with that. Yeah. I will just mention, just because you mentioned apps, is that we have just put a brand new, we have got an article on the UK Travel Planner website about apps for the UK and London, but we've actually just published a London-specific apps list on the London Travel Planning website, which is really useful because that mentions because we get asked about laundry all the time. So there is an app there about where you can get laundry done. So I thought I'd just quickly mention that.
And public toilets was another thing.
Yes, absolutely.
Very few and far between.
Yeah. So there's an app for that.
Yeah, definitely. That was and we did have that issue in Paris. As soon as we got there, Thomas was like, I need to go to the toilet, but we couldn't get into our accommodation till later. So then we're like, right, well, let's try and find a toilet. And do you know, I could not find one of those toilets that are on the corners everywhere in Paris. So we went to McDonald's and then we lined up to get in there. And then after we left there were those toilets on the
everywhere.
corner everywhere.
Oh, that's typical.
Yeah. So, no, that was definite. Doug's train tips, they were a godsend because we did most of our travel by train. So Doug is a wealth of knowledge.
He is. And, he's just launched his own itinerary consult just about train travel. I mean, you can't talk to him about other things. But if you want to do a train itinerary, to be honest, for Europe, he could do because we've done it enough. But you're going to focus on the UK. But if anybody's sitting there thinking, "Well, I'm going to do," yes, he can help you with that. So he's done that. So he's dead excited about that.
Yeah, he should be, and he knows it, and he explains it that you can understand, and that's what I like. It's in simple terms, so right when I get off here, I know that I can do this or I can look for that. So. Yeah, it definitely helped. I think packing cubes, we had them for everything, and it was great packing up when we were leaving because the kids weren't the most organised, well, the boys especially. So at least they knew it could go back into that, that cube's for my socks and that cube's for my undies. So
absolutely,
that helped with getting out of the place.
That's fantastic. The thought of not having packing cubes now is like, nope.
Yeah, and they've now just bringing out those compression packing cubes.
Yes.
Well, I'll be buying
I did use
some of
those last year, which are good. The only thing with those is everything ends up totally creased, which Mum, put my mum off. She was a bit like, every time you put anything on, it's very, very creased. I'm like, it'll fall out in 10 minutes.
Yes.
It'll be fine. But they're fantastic. So if you want to take a smaller bag, you can fit as much as you would in a bigger suitcase just by compressing it. It's great. They're like some sort of miracle. They honestly are.
Yeah, no, they're brilliant. So it was amazing how much more we could fit. And then to bring stuff home, made it even easier. So, definitely approve of the packing cubes. And portable chargers when you've got kids and phones. Have you got your portable charger charged before we leave the house? So, that was definitely a lifesaver. I think I did write down a couple when I got here this morning, compression socks on the plane.
Yeah.
That definitely helped. And Apple AirTags. We purchased those before we left and all had one. And it just, you might not need it, but it just gives that peace of mind, I think.
We bought some last year because we obviously did that kind of 5-6 month trip. And when we were in Japan, we put an AirTag in our suitcases. And in Japan, you could get these companies who'll move your suitcases. I wish they'd do it in the UK. It's amazing. So they'll go and move your suitcase. So you don't have to take it on the train or anything. They'll just move it. And so it's great. Amazing. So we were, because we were going out in the Japanese app. So they stored our suitcase for like a week. But it's a bit easier in the UK if you had to fill something in. But in Japan, trying to fill it all in, we're a bit scared.
Yes.
But I could follow where my suitcase was. Like, how great is that?
Yeah, that would be handy. Yeah, that would be good.
But I'm just going to tell you, I'm not going to tell anybody else listening, but I also put an AirTag on Doug so that I knew where he was. He knew about it. It wasn't weird. He knew about it, but he had the AirTag. So, because, I could just lose him. I'd be off somewhere and I'd be like, where's Doug gone? So AirTag, right, where is, okay, I know where he is now.
It's definitely handy. No, definitely agree. They were good. And just for that peace of mind, you've got enough to worry about while you're trying to navigate another country.
Exactly.
You don't need to be worrying about where your luggage is. And I only read an article this morning that someone had lost their luggage, I think, was it in Japan? And they said that they found it at one of the airport employees' homes only because they had a AirTag in. I went, they are handy. So,
they are worth it. They're a bit pricey, I thought, because I went to buy them. I was like, they're a bit expensive. But actually, we bought 4 and they've been very, very useful. Yeah. Very handy.
Well, my daughter bought a little key ring holder and she has them on her keys now for her car. So, she just has them hanging on there. Yes.
That's a very good idea.
But
So did you... I know that I've just asked you the tip, which is always the last thing that I ask, but you just mentioned something there that just made me think. You talked about what you brought back. So I'm kind of now nosy about wanting to know what you brought back.
So we mainly bought, the kids did some shopping for clothes and things like that, that they saw and loved. So they went to the Adidas store on the Champs-Elysees. So, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So they bought stuff like that. But I mainly bought the reusable fabric shopping bags. So I bought one of those for every place we went. So now when I go down to our local Coles, I have my Paris bag or my Scotland bag.
I have that. I do that too.
And I pull it out and I go, it's such a reminder.
It's my Japan one. Oh.
Yes. So, and plus they roll up and they're quite small, so they were easy. Plus they also, we were able to carry stuff around in them, so they would kill two birds with one stone with those. I bought scarves. This one's from Dublin that I'm wearing today. So that was handy. So I think I bought a scarf nearly everywhere we went as well, because we're in that climate that we use scarves a lot. So, and we actually bought pictures, like prints. So we bought a really nice one of the Eiffel Tower in Paris, and some other ones of Paris. And we bought a big picture of St. Andrews, like an aerial view of St. Andrews, and we've had them all framed, so they're on our walls at home. So next time I've got plans, I want to try and find some in London as well. So
lovely.
Yeah. So every time we look at the wall, we go, oh, that's a reminder.
That's lovely. It is, and it's such a lovely way to remember your trip. And also now you've got a podcast episode all about it as well.
Yes,
so you can
definitely.
Listen to that. So I'm going to sign off, because I think what are about 46 minutes. That's a good long chat we've had, Leanne, today. I just want to say thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's been amazing to talk to you. I mean, you came on the 100th episode and you were fantastic, and you've agreed to come and do your trip report, and it's been amazing to chat to you today. So thanks so much for coming on, Leanne.
Hopefully someone gets some help out of it.
Oh, I'm sure 100% that they will. And if you're listening and you're thinking, well, that was an amazing, I love that episode, pop on to Spotify and let us know, or go on to Apple and leave us a review and tell us just how much you loved the episode, because we like to hear those things. Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of the UK Travel Planning Podcast. As always, show notes can be found at uktravelplanning.com. If you've enjoyed the show, why not leave us feedback via text or a review on your favourite podcast app? We love to hear from you, and you never know, you may receive a shout out in a future episode. But as always, that just leaves me to say, until next week, happy UK travel planning.